For over half a century, humans have endeavored to make business a force for good. But is the movement working? Or is it time to explore a new path forward? Welcome to Less Talk, More Action. We are your hosts, Joel Caesar and Owen Barrett, experts in clean energy, net zero real estate, decarbonization, and entrepreneurship. In each episode, we ask provocative questions and share stories from the front lines of sustainability with leaders in science, tech, and business taking real action to design a cleaner, better future. Thanks for joining the conversation. Now, let's get to work. Welcome to Less Talk, More Action podcast. My name is Joel Caesar, the world's undisputed voice of building decarbonization. Joining me as always is Owen Barrett, the founder and CEO of America's fastest growing solar company. Today's guest, Ashley Sarauer, the founder and CEO of Untitled, a company transforming how building decarbonization is financed. This was a fun one. You know, she's comes from a background that you and I are definitely haters of, the carbon offset voluntary markets. She's an expert from there, but she's created a company that's still leaning into the carbon offset world, but trying to use those frameworks to decarbonize more buildings. So I think it's really interesting. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's our second finance or econ guest. So I think it's a good sign that we're starting to find more of them. And I think I'm still skeptical of the whole carbon offset rec space, but I do think that she's going down a path with more credibility than some of the crazier ideas that we see carbon offsets kind of revolve around.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we'll continue to explore what she's doing with Untitled, and it's going to be a great show. But before we dive into the episode, let's jump into a bit we're calling Joel's hate of the sustainability movement. So it's a world I come from. It's a world I would love to try to save from itself because it's been corrupted by just bean counters and more people looking for regulation and frameworks and ways to stop doers and entrepreneurs from actually making things. And I don't think that's what it should be doing. So that's what I'm going to frame it that way. But to say, I've seen a couple posts recently, and I'm not going to call anyone out by name because I don't want to offend anybody, but there's now there's AI focused sustainability consulting firms popping up. And there's new organizations that are starting to coalesce around this idea that we need some kind of sustainability third-party framework to regulate or make the data center hyperscaler people disclose their carbon emissions or be shamed when they're using the too bad energy. So it's I'm like, of course, this is what the sustainability nerds are doing. Oh, here's another thing I can go try to make my money off of my consulting business, making everyone else's lives miserable while doing nothing for the climate. And and everyone's patting me on the back, and it's just all this grandstanding, and it's like, I just want to scream at these people. Can't we just this is a nascent industry that America needs. Let them build right now. You guys can come back with your stupid frameworks later once they've succeeded, but we don't need another thorn in their side right now as we're trying to build this out. So that's my rant. What do you think?
I mostly agree with your rant. I do think, I think now is not the time to regulate. We're way too early, and I think I think someone's going to win the AI race. And who do we want that to be? Do we want America to have a shot at it, or do we just want to give it up to somebody else? But on the flip side of that, I see a lot of the stuff around data centers where they're just building their own generation. I don't know if they're making agreements with utilities or they're just kind of going rogue and building their own generation. And that's great from some perspective, but the piece that rubs me the wrong way is you take your average homeowner, your average building owner, and the amount of bullshit that they have to go through to interconnect renewables or batteries into the same utility grid it's insane. And so on the one side, we're just sort of letting these hyperscalers and these data centers do whatever they want when it comes to energy. And then on the flip side, you're sort of penalizing the homeowners and the small business owners who are trying to do sort of the same thing. And I just feel it's rubbing the greater population the wrong way. Like I feel like you have to let everybody have access
Well, why
to
can't they?
cheaper
I
energy.
could build a
Have you
behind the
ever
meter.
tried to?
Couldn't I build a
No,
behind the
dude.
meter system myself without talking to the utility right now?
No,
It's not possible.
not possible. You can't build a grid. You can't build a house off grid in any part of the U.S. You must be interconnected to the utility.
What happens if
So
I do?
what?
How do they know if I
No,
do?
you can't. You won't get permitted.
What I own my house right now. What if I created my own transformer and had some other electrical system that's feeding the house? Who's gonna
They
know?
will. They will not let you get off of the grid.
Okay, that's an interesting
So we're
standpoint.
so we're letting data centers do it, but we don't let homeowners do it. I guess that's
That's
my
an angle.
beef.
That's an angle I hadn't thought of. That's why it's
Yeah.
sometimes interesting to talk to you.
Sometimes I have some opinions that are worthwhile. Not
Well,
all the time.
I'm looking at a post I posted a week ago because I kept seeing stuff like this, and I created a meme where I have the Goodfellow guys laughing at the climate nerds thinking they can regulate AI emissions. But I just said if I'm Anthropic, I'm telling the climate mob to pound sand. Like we're leading an American-led economic boom. You, the sustainable industry, that's now going to get in our way again with your stupid voluntary frameworks and your public shaming of how you're going to you're burning the planet with your AI. You've tried the net zero count emissions report to some third party NGO framework nobody voted for. That this didn't work. We spent 20 years doing this, and emissions have never been higher. And
Yeah.
all you've done is piss off everyone. And now people hate climate worse than they ever did. So
Well, and also like, when are we going to learn? To your point, like, when are we going to learn that people don't really care about emissions? Like we
No.
do, our industry does. But
Most-
why not tie this back to affordability?
Most
Like, why
people
not demand that the data centers help make it more affordable for
this is what
everyday
this is what
Americans?
the delusional out of touch climate movement doesn't understand is like they're a niche, like special interest group that is shrinking. It's like you
Yeah,
guys have no
yeah.
power. You think you
Yeah.
do because the big hyperscalers have these overbloated sustainability teams, and maybe that'll change. But like those people are like leading this whole movement. But the wider population of America is like less interested in emissions and climate than ever. And this is
Yeah.
what I said to Anthropic. This is my pitch to be the Anthropic chief sustainability officer. I'd say, don't hire someone like me who's going to have a hefty salary. Don't hire a big $1 million sustainability leadership team. Don't spend millions on consultants so that you can now count your emissions and report to these idiots on LinkedIn or creating these new AI subcommittees. It's like, just don't do it. Don't fall into this trap. Stop right now and say, nope, Anthropic, we care about, we operate in the world of abundance in AI. We're not falling into your doomsday climate group scenario where we waste a lot of time and money trying to count our emissions. Like no effing way. So hire me to be your chief sustainability officer, Anthropic, and all I'll do is come on this podcast and rail against the climate idiots.
You think they're going to hire you?
No, because they're Silicon Valley. I'm sure they're in their own networks, and somebody who's on the board of Google's sustainability team or Meta's is like telling them, well, you're gonna have to hire a chief sustainability officer, and they're gonna have to have a big team. They're gonna have to hire McKinsey, and you're gonna have to have an annual report, and you're gonna count all scope 1, scope 2 emissions, and that data center you just launched in Louisiana is gonna be a big problem. So maybe you should reconsider. It's like, just don't do it. Just ignore this shit and keep building your company.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they. I wonder if they are going to go that route. I don't think they will. I feel like they're so far like in the realm of. I mean, let's be honest. Data centers are terrible for the environment, right? Like there's no disagreeing with that. So I think they're so far on the spectrum of being horrendous for the environment that it's almost like hypocritical for them to try and have a sustainability department.
Are they so terrible? I saw a guy's post the other day. I saved it. He's like ex AWS Amazon. So he's like a data center expert. He's been building them for years. And he was pointing out some facts like imagine if we counted the emissions from truck stops around the country, or what was the other example he gave about water? There was some other water example. Like you think twice about so many industries right now that are way more offensive to the environment. It's just like the data centers, because they're really wealthy companies run by really wealthy people, have become the boogeyman.
Maybe, but I've also read I mean, I don't need to tell the audience or you, like I'm the biggest Elon lover boy out there, but like I've read some shenanigans that he pulled with his Colossus in Memphis where, he brought in all these natural gas like turbines as temporary power, but they were never going to be temporary. They were always going to be permanent. And so they like got around all these environmental regulations, which, you like them, you don't like them. They're there. Like they're not meant to be
Everybody else has to
circumnavigated.
follow them. Yeah.
So
Yeah, well,
I
that's
don't
that's
know.
the that's the exact data center Colossus that Anthropic's catching so much shit for. Is
Yeah.
they just signed some huge contract with that one.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I think the simplest way for me to like summarize is it's too early. I think like there should be a point in time probably in which it's regulated. It's not now. And I think there's other ways that the AI industry could like get the population on their side if they were just a little bit smarter about like how they're going about this. They
It's
have so much
affordability for
money.
sure.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like so
Exactly.
simple and obvious,
It's
but
so obvious.
those organizations, especially the entrenched hyperscalers with these overbloated, overthinking, overeducated sustainability teams, they probably have 6 month consultant contracts to help them figure out how they actually invest in affordability, where they could just hire people to put heat pumps in. But as you can tell, I'm jaded by this whole stupid industry and process, and that's why we're going to transition to our conversation with Ashley, who's an entrepreneur and a builder and an optimist. And she's out there, instead of bitching like me, she's solving real problems.
She's
So, with
doing
that,
something.
let's jump into our conversation with Ashley Sarauer. Joining us today is Ashley Sarauer, founder and CEO of Ontily, a company transforming how building decarbonization is financed. Ashley is a carbon markets expert with deep experience in emissions accounting and climate policy, including roles at Vera, the world's largest carbon registry, and work with Canadian governments on carbon offset frameworks. At Ontily, she's pioneering a platform that turns building emissions reductions into high-quality, tradable carbon credits, unlocking new capital for retrofits and accelerating the transition to low-carbon buildings. Combining policy expertise, technical depth, and entrepreneurial drive, Ashley is helping redefine how sustainability creates real financial value. So, Ashley, welcome to Let's Talk More Action.
Thanks for having me.
Well, very interesting bio. There's going to be a lot of hot takes on this episode. I can tell already coming in. But before we dive into all that, we start every guest with the same question. Ashley, how are you taking action to make the world a better place?
Yeah, so I'm an economist by trade, so that's my bias. But yeah, I ultimately think we need less hard tech solutions. We have all the technology we need to get to net zero, but we need more financial innovation. So I started Ontily 2 years ago with the goal of mobilizing additional capital for building retrofits. And so we're both a tech company, a clean tech company, software company, and a standard that helps mobilize capital. So I see free markets as a great opportunity to make retrofits more affordable. And particularly the capital costs of retrofits are quite high. I think you heard this with your guest, Marino, on your last episode that came out. And so we're just supporting the advancement of building decarbonization through finance.
Man, Ashley, last week I said, I think it was last week, we had our first finance guest on, and I said, my perspective of I have a finance background too. I'm no economist, so you're on a new level. But I think the industry is missing that piece. Like too many people focus on the tech, too many people focus on, as Joel and I know, the reporting. But the real problem in decarbonizing is how do you finance all these projects? So glad to have you on. What led you here? How did you go from econ to clean tech / software?
Yeah, it's quite a journey. I worked for two governments designing climate change legislation. So in Canada, I worked for the government of Alberta and their industrial climate change policy and their offset system. And then I moved to British Columbia, beautiful province, very outdoorsy. And I was working as like an economist for the climate change division there. And I really got exposed to the problem of buildings through that experience where I was part of the provincial emissions inventory. And I was like, holy smokes, buildings are, 20 to 30% of global emissions. And, City of Vancouver, all these different jurisdictions are really trying to reduce emissions. And then, I was very ambitious. So my time at government was brief. I hopped over to the voluntary carbon market. I was working for Vera, which is the leader in the voluntary carbon market. I followed an old boss there. And yeah, I started at Vera very excited about the mission and the CEO, and I felt like I had a lot of purpose. But I think there was a series of, disillusionments through time where I felt like I wasn't having as much purpose as I wanted to, and that I was kind of at the pinnacle of the carbon market. And yet I didn't feel like carbon finance was being mobilized to building retrofits. And I really dug into that of like, why is this happening? Why isn't the money flowing to buildings? And so there's kind of like a series of investigations that I kind of went through in terms of thought experiments. Yeah, but really ultimately the piece, the crux of it was I tore my UCL and then I was bedridden for like a month. And I'm an ultra runner, and I put all this time and energy into running and like being very active. And suddenly I had all this time and capacity. So I, just decided I have the opportunity in my life right now to start a company, and just passion and grit has gotten me this far.
Cool. Love it.
I thought you were going to double click into the ultra running. You usually do that.
Well, my wife's an ultra runner, and I like to pretend that I'm part of the community via her, but then I have these superficial conversations and I can't really go much further than the surface. So no, but no, I mean, it's super cool. But so can you like unpack, because I hear we're starting, my company at Shine, we're starting to explore like monetizing RECs, which are related to carbon credits, carbon offsets, but different. Can you unpack what it is you're actually doing and how that, what?
One of the biggest rec haters I know is now going to try to monetize the rec market.
Well, we're doing it for a good cause, Joel. It's so that we can enable workforce development for non-college bound high school students. So I am a hater of recs. However, if I can turn a bullshit topic like a rec into good positive outcome, I'm all for it.
This is where I worry we're going to offend Ashley, and she and I have met, so she knows a little bit about like our sort of traditional anti-carbon offset stance here on the show. And I'll pat myself in the back like I love to do on the show. I've been begging for this. I think what Lee, you're going to explain better than I'm going to hear, but like this idea for a while. When at my time at Google, I used to be like, to hold the story a lot, like I'm trying to decarbonize our buildings, and yet there's all this money going into these crazy carbon removal technologies like seaweed sinking and ocean alkalinity enhancement. And I used to always be like, why can't we use some of that money to decarbonize the buildings? And sounds like maybe that's a good segue into let Ashley describe what she's doing here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll briefly touch on RECs. So they're just a different financial instrument. They're more of megawatt hour. Carbon credits are a financial grade instrument that is equal to 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent. And then there's all these different assurances that are provided. So the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets is a watchdog in the voluntary carbon market space. There's only 6 or 7 registries that have gotten the check mark of core carbon principles approval. And so we're looking to be like that 7th or 8th carbon registry that is mobilizing carbon finance under that institutional grade credit.
Wait, who's the Integrity Council?
So they are this new council that was, I think they've been around for 2 years now. And their whole mission is to kind of set a standard for carbon registries in terms of the types of assurances that they're providing. So they've essentially outlined about 150 different principles that say you have to have no double counting rules, you have to have no double use rules, you have to have a permanence process, you have to have insurance mechanisms, you have to have additionality requirements and disclose those. So there's all these different levels of scrutiny. The RECs market doesn't have that. And so that's kind of some of the differences in terms of a credibility standpoint. But the carbon market has really evolved, and there's increasingly more verticals that are coming up in terms of carbon registries. So we've seen Exometric on direct air capture and Pure Earth on biochar. So Ontally is trying to be the vertical for buildings, is ultimately what we're trying to do.
Can we get someone from the Integrity Council on the show? Can you broker that a relationship, or get me on the Integrity Council?
Oh,
no, I don't think that's not a good idea.
I have no integrity, and
they will teach you what integrity is, Joel.
All right, this is great. Ashley, as we like to do, like we poke fun at stuff, but we totally sometimes and admittedly don't understand everything. So it's good you're here educating us on the realities here. So I don't know. We got off track. Oh, and you asked for a question, and then I jumped in and told my stupid story. I think we're
Well,
just trying
no,
to learn what is Ontally. What are you doing?
and let me just preface it with like, I think what you're doing is actually like a good use of carbon offsets. I would put
Agreed, yeah.
the category of carbon offsets where we're sinking kale to the bottom of the ocean and capturing cow farts and like, et cetera, a waste of time and money with no impact. But I think tying impact to decarbonizing buildings as a means to help finance decarbonizing more buildings is a great idea. So I'd love to like understand the business model a little bit more and like what specifically are you doing? What are kind of the mechanics look like? Like how are these RECs or not RECs, carbon offsets being priced? Does it differ by market? Like just sort of the whole soup to nuts. How does it actually work?
Let's hear it. Let's get the Ontally pitch. We're the VCs here, I guess, or well, you take it away, Ashley.
Oh, I like that idea, Joel. Like Shark Tank for clean tech companies.
Well, she's already up and running. She doesn't need it, but let's. I'm sure she knows how to do the pitch here.
So we're a two-pronged organization. One, we have a certification framework, so that includes a 85-page standard that includes all the rules and requirements for operating under our program. That's really important because you need structure around it. Otherwise, you can't just trust that people are reducing emissions. So we have a whole framework that we've built for all the steps you have to essentially meet to be eligible under our system. We've also created methodologies for how we calculate the emissions reductions that align with IPCC standards. We've created all these different advisory boards that inform this whole system and its governance. So it's about 400 pages that we created of content that says these are the rules of how you play in this system. All of that is aligned with the Integrity Council, so we've submitted our application to them, and we're now waiting their approval. We're also a clean tech company, which means we have what's called the Ontally portal, which is a portal that building owners sign into. They have a secure login. They can act either as a building owner or a building representative, uploading the building on their behalf. We've created this step process where they can first list their building in this buyer's portal that we've created. So you can either have a buyer or supplier account. You list your building for $200. Buyers can then start getting access to like early buyer exploration conversations. So we're acting as an early matchmaker with the portal.
So wait, real pause right there. Sorry. Yes. I own a building that I think has opportunities to be retrofit. I pay $200 to put that building in this platform?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So what we heard is that there's almost a barrier at the point of feasibility studies where people are just like grappling with these business cases, all these different scenarios. And we kind of need to have the conversation quite early in the process so that before they get to the final design, they can already start like mapping in carbon finance at an early stage. So that's how we create that initial opportunity. And then once they're posted and listed in the platform, these buyers are going to want the assurance that we provide. So then the building owner is responsible for filling out a series of forms through us, project intake form, baseline utility data, financials, different safeguard forms that we've created, building owner attestation, et cetera. And then we generate a report to them, which is a 70-page report of all the calculations. In the back end, we have all these different algorithms and models that are modeling the GHGs, modeling the financial deltas, modeling regulatory surplus, which is making sure it's over and above what's required by law. So there's all these different checks that we do. We issue that report to them through the platform, and that report allows them to then enter pre-purchase contracts with buyers, which enables them to forward sell their emission reductions into the future. Then you go back, implement your project. You're responsible for reporting your utility bills as a monitoring submission in the platform through time. And we actually issue the credits on an annual basis based on the actual performance of the building. We do all the calculations for you again, and we're serializing those units with our own unique serial numbers in the platform and issuing them to the platform. And then you can then transact them. So you can, buyers can reserve them. Buyers can send you offers in the platform. You can state your willingness to pay for these credits. They can send you offers in terms of their willingness to accept. So there's all these different complexity that we built into the platform to make it as easy as possible to access the voluntary carbon market.
Do you know the equivalence between one REC and one carbon offset?
I would just say that they're different financial instruments. Like,
I mean, like more so, like is a megawatt hour equivalent to a
a
certain
metric ton
number?
CO2
Yeah.
equivalent. Not necessarily, because a megawatt hour is a unit of electricity generation, which would have a different emissions intensity based on the grid that it's generated. And so it wouldn't be like a one-to-one situation.
No, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is we've looked at RECs to help projects pencil, but in the voluntary rec market, they're so insignificant to the project cost
Yes.
that it doesn't move the needle.
Yes.
So where I was going with this is, does it have to be the building owner that is selling the offsets, or can it be the vendor, the contractor? Because
Yeah.
for us contractors aggregating all of these projects, the numbers get to be compelling.
Yes.
But on a bill, if the value of a carbon offset is roughly equivalent to the value of a rec, from our perspective, and from building owners' perspectives that we've talked to, it's like kind of meaningless to the overall financial return of a project. Doesn't move the needle.
Yeah. So that's a key differentiator for us. We're the first registry to issue credits based on real data instead of estimation models. And so we have that granularity of data down to the building level or small aggregations of buildings, because we want buyers to be able to see what they're buying. They want to know what building, what technology, rather than saying, okay, in this, state of New York, there's 50,000 buildings. We've aggregated them all together, and you have no idea what's happening there. So we're actually trying to be and are premium price registry. So we're exploring prices of $100 to $150 per ton for these credits, rather than just accepting the current prices in the market. So current prices for offsets of the forestry types are, $7 to $15 per ton. We're really helping mobilize higher prices, one, by anchoring with the different building performance standards, like New York State's building performance standard, $268 per ton.
Yep.
Linking with different price floors that are occurring in different compliance markets. And then just telling the story of what we're offering. So it's the quality of the real data that doesn't decrease. It eliminates the risk of fraud.
Yeah, it helps the legitimacy of this whole market, which, as you probably know more than anyone, Ashley, is a reputation issue, as we on the show poke fun at. But still acknowledging, both of us here, Owen and I, like, this is a great opportunity. This can be figured out. And I was going to ask about the price per ton, because back to my story in my world, like, I used to have these arguments. I'll say, okay, well, if it's going to be too challenging to decarbonize our own buildings for our net zero target, and I'm seeing money in this organization go towards what I think are these crazy carbon removal technologies, why don't we do what you're saying? This was years ago when you didn't exist. I was like, why don't we go into New York City and low-income housing and try to invest some of this money into helping reduce the emissions that way? And there's all these co-benefits. We're improving communities. We're hopefully addressing the energy burden. We're helping buildings that would have difficulty comply with Local Law 97 comply. All these, like, things that we can all say, yeah, that'd be great for our company to try to help with. But then I'd get pushback from the carbon nerds being like, well, doing a couple heat pumps in a multifamily building in New York is just like not going to move the needle on climate change compared to sinking seaweed in the ocean. And that's where the math maybe is real, but gets to the realities of like how you're going to get a wider coalition to support this work. Because I think what you're trying to do, like the transparency of that building in New York City, and this gets me to my next part of my question. What I was going to ask was, I keep coming back to this Venn diagram of building decarbonization, where you're saving the owner money, and Owen's business is very focused on that, increasing NOI and making the owner say, yes, this makes sense. This is what I should do from a value creation standpoint, regardless of climate. And you're reducing emissions because there's going to be regulation and there's going to be companies and people that care. And especially in low-income buildings, you are reducing the cost of energy for tenants. So when you hit that Venn diagram, that's like, I'm calling it the holy grail of building decarbonization. So I'd imagine, like, in your marketplace, can that be daylight as well? Like, yeah, you're selling $100, $150 a ton, and that's going to help XYZ company with their net zero commitment, but you're also helping citizens in this community. And you, hyperscaler, who everyone hates right now, you need as much goodwill as you can get.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think those are all data points that we're trying to shine light on. And I think carbon registries in the past have just said, oh, it's too complicated to have this level of nuance and tell all these different stories. But I think now we live in the age of AI, and having this complexity built into the model is actually possible now. And we really want to, showcase that granularity and what the co-benefits of this community affordable housing association, these cooling benefits, this different attributes for every project. And the other piece is that we're rating the projects. So we're rating them based on financial additionality, how long the payback period is. And so buyers get a real sense of how much their finance is contributing to this project moving forward. So I think there's just been a lot of information asymmetry in the carbon market to date, and we're helping dismantle that. And I think we just need to kind of combat some of these narratives that the current carbon market is enough. And that's kind of coming down the pipeline. There's been a ton of greenwashing cases, 150 different greenwashing cases in the last 10 years. We saw the first fraud case for $100 million worth of credits in 2024. So I think there's kind of this reckoning happening in the carbon market.
What was the removal technology on the $100 million fraud?
Cook stoves and some LED lighting, I believe.
I like cook stoves. I did Engineers Without Borders at Brand, actually. Owen, we did cook stoves. That's legit. I mean,
I don't know. I don't think it is. I'm on the side of the prosecutor with this one.
well, no,
it's too hard.
Maybe there was fraud, but I'm saying like there is an opportunity in cook stoves. What, like, to me, like the ocean alkalinity enhancement, that's public enemy number one for me in carbon removal technologies. But that's why the cooking stove is not so bad.
Ashley, when you guys on your guys' platform, just real quick, are you paying upfront for a stream of carbon credits over a certain amount of time?
No. So we're not a buyer of credits.
Well,
Sorry. Is that how they're being purchased? Is that how they're being purchased?
Oh, how they're being purchased. It depends. It depends on the buyer. So some of the brokers would want a large package, and we're creating that functionality in the system that they can select these aggregation models. But often we're finding, so for example, a buyer of these credits are the financial institutions in Canada. And so they're also interested in selling sustainable finance products to these prospective clients. And so they want that granularity down to the building level and the portfolio level and the client level so that they can say, look, we'll buy a certain percentage of your carbon credits if you then enter into this retrofit loan product. And so they're going to be like on a case-by-case basis offering certain solutions. So that's an example of non-aggregating.
But say a building owner is going to decarbonize their building and it's going to create, I don't know, it's going to save 1 ton per year. Mm-hmm. Is someone coming in and buying 10 years?
That's going to be another problem, right? Is like the buyers want to buy big chunks at once.
Yes. So we're creating optionality for smaller purchases. We do kind of require at least like 30 to 40 tons per year times a 10-year crediting period. So that's 400 tons. That's kind of like our threshold for where our costs will make sense and it's economic to use our system. We're kind of encouraging brokers on both sides. So we have a series of brokers lined up on the buyer side that already trade and sell credits in different markets, create these portfolios. And we're trying to do the same on the supply side where these building representatives can act on building owners' behalf.
So we can have the less talk, more action brokerage on Untitled?
Sure, if you want to.
I'm trying to.
We got a lot of projects on this platform.
I mean, I'm over here trying to pay attention and crunch some numbers. That's why I'm trying to ask these specific questions. But Ashley, you know that the tax credit for solar is going away as of July 4th, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Which leaves a 30% hole in most capital stacks for solar, effectively. I'm trying to figure out if your platform can plug that hole for solar projects, because that'd be for me and every other solar contractor out there, that's like a huge advantage if you can figure it out. But I guess what I'm still trying to understand is, if I have a solar project or I'm a building owner putting in a solar project, will somebody buy these carbon offsets for a designated period of time? Like, will someone buy 10 years of carbon offsets up front today?
Yes. So the contracts work in a way that you are like locking in price and delivery schedule, and you often won't get that full amount of cash right up front, but it's usually like, 30-50% up front, and then you have like the rest delivered through time. As for our current methodologies, right now we're focused on fuel switching and operational emissions within the building. And scope 2 is currently out of scope due to complexities related to utility grids and potential double counting with utilities. So we're in this process of now developing methodologies that include solar and
Oh, so like on-site solar doesn't count on your platform.
not right now. Yeah. So we're really focused on just like HVAC system upgrades, different energy efficiency measures. Great examples include like hospitals and like commercial buildings and institutional buildings, airports, etc. So we are gunning for big projects.
How do efficiency projects not fall into the same trap as like what happens to the grid in the future is solar?
Are you asking why we
You're
don't?
getting you're gonna get down a carbon accounting rabbit hole you do not want to go down, Owen.
Really?
I mean, I used to have this fight like there's.
I just don't
I'm a
understand
little-
though.
I'm
I'm
a
an
little-
outsider.
I'm a
so I
little
don't
out of
get it.
practice, but there used to be like I would get discouraged to put solar on our own buildings because of the way the calculus works for carbon accounting. It was like less useful to us than doing heat pump retrofits, even though it would like had a better impact on overall emissions. But the way it's accounted for, it was like I had the same thing. I remember talking to carbon accounting people like, so whatever system you're following is discouraging me from putting solar on that blank roof over there. That was like the start of my issue with carbon
But
accounting.
if solar and efficiency are both decreasing kWh from the same grid,
But it's the scope 1 and scope 2 thing. I'm sorry, Ashley, we're having this.
Yeah,
I should let you
you're totally
answer.
right. It is scope 1, scope 2. We're focused on scope 1 right now because it's clearer from a legal title perspective. Scope 2 gets a little bit more gray because you're technically not in control of the utility providing the electricity. And the other piece is
Your solar on site, Owen, is changing their scope 2 calculus, not your scope 1.
So when you guys do HVAC, you're electrifying HVAC. You can't do a more efficient. Well, I guess maybe you could do. Yeah.
can.
So you're focused on electrifying.
Yeah.
Man, see, I feel like this is why everybody hates this industry. It's just like, come on, give me a fucking
actually,
break.
Actually, it's a segue into a question I wanted to ask Ashley, and this is going to be a tough question. I'm sorry, but you are doing everything right, and that is IPCC, advisory boards, 400-page rulings, integrity council, assurance definitions, like all these things are like, yeah, you can have a legitimate marketplace. You're trying to overcome an industry that has fraud and reputation issues. You've got to do all that. But to me and Owen, that sounds a lot like what we encounter in our world now of commercial retrofit industry of everyone spends so much time trying to navigate these complex reporting frameworks that they can't actually do the projects. Like everything that all adds cost. So it's like, how do you, and I guess the answer might be AI here, but like, how do you're asking someone to really do things right. 400-page navigation. There's probably going to be consultants, advisory boards, but now you're adding cost to these projects you're trying to get done, which your solution was to try to create more projects, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, to put in simple terms, we have kind of dumbed it down through the use of software because we want all this integrity to be there. We want people to grill us on all of our principles, how we design the system, why it is high integrity. But from the software perspective, it's really user friendly. Once you're in there, it says this task is due, fill out this form. And then we kind of just like walk you through all the steps of the process, and you're actually getting issued the credits in the platform. All the buyers are in the platform. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for it all. So we're hoping, and we've tested it with a lot of real estate clients now, that it is really user-friendly and that you don't have to understand these 400 pages of complexity. We've developed tools for eligibility, so you just go through the screening. We'll tell if your project is eligible or not. We have a carbon revenue estimation tool on our website with different building archetypes and retrofit scenarios. And so we're developing all of this infrastructure to say, yes, your project is eligible. Let's try to get you this carbon finance.
It's a good answer. I'm sure I know it's a tough question because it's like you have to do everything you're doing to make it legit, but then like I just described, that does start to feel like cost for an industry that already has too many middlemen and too many consultants.
Exactly.
Well, Oh, and I'm going to transition us to the entrepreneurial journey here, unless you have more questions trying to figure out your capital stack.
No, no, I don't. We can move on.
We'll come back because I think maybe I've thought about this a lot, like what Ashley, like this conversion of Rex to carbon offsets. Like, there's something here, Owen, that you should look into. And I'm sure, Ashley, you're in a mode of looking for good partnerships and people that are trying to figure out how to use your system. But that's a good segue to the next question here, which is, hey, cool tech, trying to solve problems. We're all about that here, learning about what you're actually doing. But what's also cool here is to learn about your journey. So you talked about torn ACL and economists and voluntary carbon market expert. But yeah, how'd you decide, let's start a software finance marketplace? I'm probably not describing it right, but like, yeah, tell us about the entrepreneurial journey and how's it going.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, like I have a really purpose-driven founder story. I feel like I was working for Vera, and I had these series of instances that occurred that it really left me feeling disillusioned about the current market.
Wait, Vera's the world's largest carbon registry, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were working there and you had an epiphany. Okay.
Yeah, I had an epiphany. And then I just had time during the ACL to really sit with the idea. I like mapped out like a whole book of my ideas related to this and said, like, these are all the issues we have to solve. This is how I would solve them. And then really I just joined this random entrepreneur event where I connected with some investors, and they said, for people to take you seriously, you're going to have to quit your job and you're going to have to do this full time. And so I was like, you know what? I'm young enough to like give this a go. I'm going to take this chance and bet on myself. And so I quit my job. I was like literally like on a cane because I could barely walk after this ACL surgery. And I just started going to all these industry events, like networking with the real estate green buildings community. And people just started getting to know who I am. Went to like Climate Week, all these different things. And I just feel like it's a small, tight-knit industry and people just start to learn about you. And so I got invited to different panels and like conferences to speak about the solution. And I really just tried to pull in as many people as you can. I think being an entrepreneur is really about connecting people and like multiple ideas, not just your own. And so I did this really like deep dive of like, what do people actually want? People want it to be easy. They want, just like more of a software solution. And so I was like, okay, I don't really know how to build software, but I'm going to vibe code it. And so I did. I learned how to vibe code and I built the initial prototype myself. And then I realized I needed capital so that it wouldn't just be me. So I networked with investors. Only 3% of female founders get finance from equity funds. So I raised a really small round from angel investors, a host of like women's equity groups that were just trying to support female founders. And I raised enough money to hire like a part-time software developer, a UI designer, someone in operations, and then myself. And so we just finalized the entire structure of the software, launched it in March, and have been testing it with real estate groups ever since. We're in this process of signing a contract with New York State, for example. We have some of the largest, like the era of the largest financial institutions in Canada. We're talking to a series of different tech companies. We're talking to all these pension funds and REITs. Through the New York State opportunity, we got introduced to like some of the biggest players in real estate. So we're kind of just trying to go from 0 to 100 and very humble beginnings. And we're currently raising our next round to start scaling the technology.
There you go, Joel. There's your in.
There's our Let's Talk More Action VC fund. Yeah. Well, it's a cool story, Ashley. And congratulations on getting to where you are. I guess so. When were you vibe coding? How quickly how'd you go from vibe coding to you got a pilot with the state of New York?
Yeah, I think I was vibe coding about a year ago. And then we really quickly built the software. I think I did enough of a good job on the front end. And then I found this wizard of a back end software developer. And so we were able to build an enterprise grade software within like a series of 4 months, launch it, get, test it out with these early adopters. And now we're iterating and building out, like advancements to the buyer's portal adding AI. I'm applying to all these Canadian grants for R&D related to AI. So yeah, it's just really advancing from here.
Owen is a Bernie Sanders AI hater. He wants to shut down all the data
I think we
centers.
shut them all down. Go back 20 years. No, joking. Actually, Joel, Shine is soon to be an AI software company, which you'll see. We're going to go to the moon like Allbirds. We're just going to do a total pivot straight to AI. No, but Ashley,
Ashley, I know you're a fan of the show, but I don't know if we've had a couple of debates recently where he makes fun of AI and says it has no purpose and is not going to lead to any decarb. And now he's starting his own AI company. See that?
I have a similar background where I was trying to like moonlight as an entrepreneur and got almost the exact same advice. An angel investor said, I don't invest in part-time entrepreneurs, which like led me to quit my job and then pitch him later as a full-time entrepreneur. And then he passed on the opportunity, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
It's hilarious now. It was not hilarious at the time. But what, like, how did you have, I find a lot of the times with entrepreneurs, there's like this moment, like the straw that breaks the camel's back, where you're just like, this is it. I gotta go for it. Did you have one of those moments, or was it just sort of like cumulative as you were recovering from your ACL that you just gradually got persuaded to like go for it full time?
I think there was this industry event that I got invited to a few months before I left, where it was put on by this emissions trading association, and this room was just packed with oil companies, and there was this like after party where it was just like everyone mingling together, and this oil exec came up to me and he's like, "Who do you work for?" And I said, "Vera." And he's like, "Oh, do you still believe?" And it was kind of just this moment where I was like, oh my goodness, it just feels like there's a decent amount of collusion between these industries. And I just don't feel like we're going to get to the net zero state by continuously funding these out there projects and like in perpetuity buying these like carbon removals, because we're not actually transforming the environment that we live in. And so it's just like, I'm at the pinnacle of this market. Who else has this experience to actually try to pull this off? I feel like I have this unique expertise that would just get lost if I didn't try to go for it. So yeah, I just I thought to myself, I have a lot of integrity and I want to try to make change. And that's why I left.
That's awesome.
It's a great answer.
I think, yeah, it is a great answer. I think it reminds me, I told this to someone not too long ago, but like, I feel like founders, you have to be a little bit egotistical. Like you have to be like, I can do this. Nobody else can. If I don't do it, it's not going to happen. And like, that's a funny trait to have. But I feel like it's required to start. It's required to be successful for sure, because if you don't have that, you're not going to stay in the game long enough to like see how your idea plays out.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You have to be almost overly optimistic, but at the same time, like almost secretly to yourself, kind of know all these different tensions that are happening and all the challenges. And so it's kind of this like weird balancing act of like optimism and pessimism. And yeah, it's been a wild journey so far. I've also been ghosted by VCs and like almost signed, like got $1 million from one and then got ghosted the next week. And, signing this contract with New York where they were like quiet and now they've come back. It's just a wild ride, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, now you mentioned REITs and big commercial real estate organizations. Yeah, good luck with them and their sales cycles too, as we know.
I know.
Well, Ashley, great stuff. I think we'll transition to the last question here. I was gonna ask you something else about the tech, but we're gonna have you back. As you might have heard, this is becoming the How I Built This of clean tech. And in that vein, we want to have folks like yourself come on, and you're pretty early in your journey, but a year from now, 2 years from now, when you're out there decarbonizing every building in North America and maybe beyond, you can tell us about what's happened since, and we'll have you back and ask you a little more questions. But all that said, environmental movement, sustainability, a lot of negativity, a lot of bad news, too much focus on the downsides. We like to end the show on optimism. So Ashley, what gives you hope for the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I draw a lot of optimism from other movements in history. So I particularly am really fond of just the women's right movement and how, in 1972, a woman tried to run a marathon and was told she wasn't allowed to when we were actually banned from running. And so you've seen these different movements through time of change happening. 1920s, only two countries in the world allowed women to vote. And here I am 100 years later, and I'm able to start a company as a woman. So I think change is slow, but it happens really incrementally at first, but then all at once. And so I think a very similar thing is happening for the climate movement, where we're pushing and driving, and we're going to see really slow, undulating change. But I do think we're kind of in this tipping point where we're going to see big changes in the next decade.
I hope you're right.
It's our job to not give up, though. I feel like it's our job to be optimistic about it.
It's great stuff, Ashley. Yeah, it's a good way to end the show. So let's what do you got to plug? So should we send people to your website? They follow you. What's the best way to follow along here?
Yeah, so our website is ontly.org, ONTOLY. We also would love if you followed along on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to accept your friend request and answer any questions you have. But yeah, we're just booking tech demos actually through the website, so you can just connect with us strictly through there.
Great stuff. Well, you and I should connect. As I mentioned, I've been thinking about this idea for years, especially on the BPS markets and how they're going to accept fine revenue and why that's nuts to me. So I love this idea in so many ways. So Ashley, we'll be rooting for you, and thanks for joining.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Ashley.
And thank you, Owen. Thank you to our audience. You can find Owen and I on LinkedIn, usually actively antagonizing the more talk, more complaining sustainability crowd. You can find this podcast and more great content at lesstalkmoreaction.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. And until next time, we encourage you to ask yourself, what are you doing to take action to make the world a better place?